All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, don't look now, but for the second consecutive week in the infant stages of the 2021 college football season, the Pac 12 has themselves a big win. Now, last week we saw UCLA upset LSU at home. And this week, it was Oregon's job. Only difference, they went to Columbus and knocked off the third ranked team in the nation in the Ohio State Buckeyes, which is something that a lot of people, myself included, didn't think the Ducks had the ability to do today, especially with the injuries that they had on defense, most notably to defensive end Kayvon Thibodeau. But in getting that upset win today over Ohio State, Oregon, plain and simple, they out physicaled the Buckeyes in the trenches on both sides of the ball. We saw the Ducks have 269 yards on the ground, with 161 of those coming from running back CJ Verdell, and he also had a pair of rushing touchdowns. Now, Oregon offensively was 8 of 16 on third down today. And you look at it, you go back to the second quarter. Oregon really set the tone. They were backed up against their own end zone. The drive actually started at the 1 yard line, and they went 99 yards in 10 plays on this Ohio State defense. As a matter of fact, it was several times today that Oregon was backed up against their own end zone, and Ohio State had an opportunity for a 3-and-out, and they couldn't do it. And at first, Oregon was able to tilt the field position, and before you know it, they were marching down the field for a touchdown. So, it's one of those where, this is the second week in a row for Ohio State that they allowed a running back to get off. Last week, it was Muhammad Ibrahim of Minnesota. And of course, that game changed when Ibrahim went out with the foot injury. And of course, unfortunately for the Golden Gophers, he's lost for the season. But you look at it defensively, Ohio State really has to try to find a way to get it together. And this actually dates back to last year, because go back to that national championship game versus Alabama, and the Crimson Tide did whatever they wanted to this Ohio State defense. Minnesota had their way for a good portion of the game last week. And then, of course, today it was Oregon. Now, on the flip side, Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud was 35 of 54 passing for 484 with three TDs, and he had that one costly pick late in the game to Veron McKinley. You look at C.J. Stroud, he showed tremendous upside today. He did miss a couple of open receivers in this game that could have made a difference in this game for Ohio State. But it's going to be a growing process this season for him, and it's going to be a growing process for this Ohio State offense, and honestly, this Ohio State team. But again, defensively, Ohio State was not able to make the key stops defensively. Oregon had more than 500 yards of total offense. Granted, the Buckeyes themselves had 600 on the ground. But typically, if you're going to say that Ohio State is going to have more than 600 yards of total offense in a game at home at the Horseshoe, you would think that they would win. Let's, look at this, because this is a big credit to Oregon. And, some things you got to question about Ohio State. I mean, everything was against Oregon in this game. You're going east as a West Coast team for a 12 o'clock start on the East Coast. Of course, this was in the central region, but still, and a 9 o'clock start back home. That's number one. You're not without your best defensive player. And you're going into this game where some people questioned how good you can be after, Fresno State played you close at home last week. And, Oregon went out there and they answered the bell. And for Ohio State, on the flip side, they had extra time to prepare for this game, because remember, their contest versus Minnesota came on a Thursday night. So, Ohio State, everything was set up for them to go out there and take care of their business. First home game this season, first time in front of fans since 2019 at their place. And Oregon went out there, and I think they did a good job early on of getting the crowd out of the game. The crowd was not a factor. When you're playing in front of 100,000 people and all of a sudden a Horseshoe can get quiet, it's a big difference. The place really didn't, like, the noise factor really didn't come into play until late in that contest when Ohio State was attempting to rally. So I think this is a credit to Oregon and their head coach, Mario Cristobal, for having this team ready to play. And, speaking of Mario Cristobal, he has really established himself and this program at Oregon. He was a former offensive lineman, of course, was a part of a national championship team with the University of Miami as a player. He's brought that swagger to the Pacific Northwest, and now he is adding his own flavor, so to speak, to this Oregon program. And again, you cannot say enough about the impact of this win from Oregon today or that of UCLA last week because, it's been several years since we've seen the Pac 12, number one, have a program in the college football playoff. And there's been a lack of respectability, and rightfully so, in recent years for the Pac 12 because they've struggled in non conference play, they've struggled in the bowl season, and they failed to produce a representative for the college football playoff. That could change this year because you look at this big win for Oregon, and Oregon has to try to find a way to build off of that. And of course, UCLA, it looks like a different team this year under head coach Chip Kelly. And the way things are, I think Oregon, they got Stony Brook at home next week, so I don't see them taking a big step backwards in that contest. But you look at Oregon's next couple of games, they're very favorable. They begin Pac 12 play on the 25th of September when they host Arizona. The week after that, they're at Stanford, and then they're off before they host Cal. But the big one is going to be on October 23rd when the Ducks travel to the Rose Bowl to take on UCLA. You also look at November 20th at Utah. Those could be some big games right there. But honestly, I don't see anybody in the Pac 12 North, and I said this before the season began, that was going to slow Oregon down from at least getting to the Pac 12 championship game. So, a lot of things can happen. They could potentially face USC there, UCLA, Arizona State. We don't know. Those are the three teams that are going to be in contention in the South. But if Oregon can keep this up, they will definitely be in the college football playoff. Now, on the flip side for Ohio State, tough loss, yes, but I'm not ready to write the Buckeyes off because I think that they have the ability to bounce back from this loss. Why? Because regardless of this loss, I still say Ohio State is the best team in the Big Ten Conference. This young team is going to get better as the season progresses. I mean, they have a couple of layups for the next couple of weeks. They host Tulsa next Saturday. They host Akron after that, and then they begin, or pardon me, they're right back into their second Big Ten game on October 2nd when they travel to Piscataway to take on Rutgers. I talked about that Penn State game on October 30th that could be tough, but you look at that back end of Ohio State schedule, it's not going to be easy, but I think they're going to be battle tested, taking on the likes of Penn State. Michigan State looks tougher this year under head coach Mel Tucker, and you never know what you're going to get from Michigan in that final game of the season, but I think that Ohio State, they're still going to be in contention to win the Big Ten. I still say Ohio State wins the Big Ten. And, the thing is, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. I mean, we've seen Ohio State have tough early season non-conference losses before. We saw them have a tough loss a couple of years ago to Oklahoma, and then they got things going. We've seen for several years people have written the Buckeyes off earlier in the season, and they got it going. I think around October, you're going to see this Buckeyes team really get their sea legs, probably towards late October. They're going to get their sea legs. They're going to be rolling. And then by December, this loss today is going to be forgotten about. That's the bottom line. So I think this is going to be a learning process for both teams. Oregon is going to have a happy flight back to Eugene tonight, while the Buckeyes are going to look to get back to the drawing board, not be too hard on themselves, but they have to play better. CJ Stroud will play better. This defense definitely has to get played better, especially up front. They've got to go out there and play with more attitude, more physicality, and more swagger. Didn't happen today. That's a big reason why Ohio State lost. But bottom line is Oregon was the better team, and to the victor goes the spoils, as the Pac-12 got some much needed respectability this afternoon in Columbus. So folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 pounds of sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.